If you've ever struggled with fear, doubt, or worry, and wondering what your true purpose was all about, then this podcast is for you. In this show, your host, Sylvia Worsham, will interview elite experts and ordinary people that have created extraordinary lives. So here's your host, Sylvia Worsham.
Hey, Lightbringers, it's Sylvia Worsham, your host of Released Out, Revealed Purpose. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the benefits of gratitude journaling. It's something I discovered long ago and something I've actually come to thoroughly enjoy and incorporate into my daily life, but it didn't come that easily. And I want to share the story behind how I discovered gratitude journaling and why I think it's a very good technique to get out of fear and possibly that fear chapter you're currently in. So let me take you back a couple of years back to 2018, been married for 5 years. You know how it is with married couples, sometimes resentments built up. And we had just gotten to a point in our marriage where something needed to change. And back in those years, I was someone that had just become a coach, but I didn't really understand the full concept of how I was operating, projecting in my marriage. And because we all have blind spots. And this is why, for those that are getting coached out there by mindset coaches, spiritual transformation coaches like me, turning points coaches, whatever, you want to make sure that your coach is getting coached because we all have blind spots and we all need to be able to see the signs that we're projecting onto others because like anybody else, we don't see it sometimes because we're operating from the subconscious part of our mind, and that is on automatic. So without further ado, our marriage was hitting a rough patch. And I remember my husband telling me, you're a really negative person. And I used to always tell myself I was a realist, but truth be told, just to really say it out there and take accountability for my actions, I truly was. I would focus a lot on the negative aspects of any situation, be the first thing that would pop into my head, and I would just blurt it out. And so for anybody on the receiving end, it looked like, hey, yeah, she's a very negative person. I was always focused on that. So yeah, I was. So one of the things that I want you to always remember is what you focus on, you will find it everywhere. And what you focus on will grow. So I was very focused on the negative aspects of my relationship. I was very negative when it came to my health. I was very negative when it came to other aspects, even of my career. So one of the things that I really started to do to kind of get my mind to quiet down was to take about 5 minutes a day, close my eyes, and try not to move. And it was my way of telling my mind that I was the boss, that I was in control. Because if you try to sit there for an extended period of time, you'll realize very quickly that you want to move and fidget, and it's just too much because we're so used to so much noise, social media, where our phones are always in our hand. There's always noise in the background. There's always stuff happening around us. Our mind doesn't know how to be quiet. So we really want to be very, very quiet. And to start doing that is to just sit quietly for 5 minutes. And when I did, I realized that I did have the power to control my mind in the way I needed to control it. It wasn't in control of me. I was the boss. And so that technique, now, if 5 minutes is too long for y'all, I'd say maybe start with 2 minutes and build up and do baby steps on this, right? So that's one technique. The other technique I started to really pay attention to was how I was speaking and thinking. So for one day, all I did was observe without judgment my thoughts. What were the thoughts that I was engaging with primarily inside my head? And how was I speaking? How was I writing? And I carried a little journal around with me, and I would jot down some notes because I'm kind of a nerd. And I like to see my process so that I can explain it to others, much like I'm doing it here on the podcast. And what I realized was I was using a lot of don't, didn't, shouldn't, wouldn't, couldn't. Notice how the not is at the end of each verb. So what you want is to observe Simply observe with no judgment, with zero judgment. Because I would say no judgment, and then I started to switch the no to zero judgment to change the way I even spoke. Because then I was changing the way I was writing it down on a sheet of paper. And if I was journaling, for example, and I caught myself writing the word not or no, I would try to think and focus on the way I could say it in the affirmative. So I am versus I wasn't, things like that. Anytime the word no came up, I would make a mental notation and think back to what the interaction was that prompted me to say that or not to say yes, for example. I want to receive instead of no, I don't want that. Not right now. See how it's very common. You hear it, you speak it, you write it down, you're thinking it. But it always starts with a thought, because I want to go back to the inaugural, or rather not the inaugural episode, but the second episode where I talked about how your mind works, subconscious mind. So you have the belief systems at the root that are kind of driving those thoughts. But the thought is a conscious ability of your mind. So you really have control of this. You can make different choices in your life if you choose to. If you choose to. If you want to continue in the circumstances you're in, do things as you're doing it now. But if you feel a pull to change and there's something going on, a life pivotal moment, like was my case where we were at a crossroads in our marriage, a very young marriage still, because 5 years into it is fairly young. I mean, you see couples turning 50 and 60 years old, 5 years is really nothing. And it's still baby steps and still at the beginning of any relationship. So watch and observe for an entire day. The second thing, and the third and final thing I did was I started to journal. I started to journal pages, and I started to, instead of journaling pages to declare my mind, I started to journal 5 things I was grateful for. And how I wrote these things down, it wasn't in long form, is I would put the date, I would put where I was, what time of day it was, and I would put, I got to. And then I was like, at first it was really simple stuff. Like I got to go outside and enjoy the day with my kids. I got to drink an awesome cup of coffee. I got to have a joyful conversation with friends. Things like that. I got to, because you don't have to do anything. You got to do something because you are alive. You're highly blessed. And you have choices that you can make. And when you start to shift the way that your mind sees things and the focus of your mind, everything around you changes. Everything becomes brighter and more beautiful and more colorful around you. But it is a consistent, daily, intentional effort on your part. And I want to say that again. It's the law of intentionality. You really have to tell yourself every day, I choose to see the joy in life. I choose to be grateful. I choose to be the boss of my own thoughts. My thoughts do not control me, or in the affirmative, I am the boss of my thoughts. I am in control of how I think and who I engage with and what influences I allow to speak into me. You have control. It is a conscious ability of your mind to interrupt those thoughts. You can do that. If I can do it, and I was a very negative person, and I have shifted my mindset around to the point that now I view laundry as a positive occurrence in my life. I mean, that is huge. I hated laundry. But you know what I did? I stacked it with watching my Netflix shows. So now I really want to use that time that I folded laundry and did all these chores and watched my Netflix shows. And now I want to do my chores. I want to be there for my family. I want to experience all of this. And it was all through these 3 techniques that I discussed. So let's go over them again. Sit for 2 to 5 minutes without moving, closing your eyes and focusing simply on your breath. Simple, right? Second technique is gratitude journal. It's observing on a daily basis what kinds of thoughts, what kinds of influences, with zero judgment, how you're speaking to yourself, how you're speaking to others, what thoughts you're engaging with. The power of observation is something that's available to all of us. You have that ability just like I do. And the third and final technique is the gratitude journaling, is to focus your mind on what you've got to do. It doesn't have to be this extreme, elaborate thing that you're doing. It's to start small and build up. So it could be as simple as, I got to drink a cup of coffee today. I got to wake up. I got to spend time with my family. I got to spend time with my friends. Whatever it is that you got to do that day. And what the law of reflection, as you reflect on your day and write these things down, is then it becomes a very powerful technique for your mind to then start creating the identity of someone who focuses on the positive, because that does take time. Remember, you are going against the programming of all those years when you program your mind to think negatively. So if it was 40 years of doing that and you're now starting this change, give yourself tons of grace, guys. You're doing the change, keep going. If on days that you fall off the wagon, pick yourself back up and tell yourself, I've got this, and keep going forward and keep making those changes. And by the time you turn around, you are this positive person now, and you've changed, and everybody changes around you because they see and they feel your change. And it actually motivated my husband to get coaching himself, because he felt like I was doing a lot of the heavy lifting in our marriage, and he didn't feel comfortable with that. And that's pretty cool. And then he got coached and he improved on some of these aspects that were really detrimental in our marriage, because we all contribute to it. And remember, guys, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. You just have to water the grass. So you got to water your side of it. Do what it takes to stay married to someone that you love very much, and do the work. Roll up your sleeves and do the work. And ultimately, you're the one that benefits. Aside from the marriage by some consequence will benefit, but you will benefit immeasurably. So I'm Sylvia Worsham. Thank you so much for tuning in to this special episode on gratitude journaling, how to get out of a fear-based chapter on maybe something you're journeying through fear, through gratitude journaling. Have a wonderful week. Stay safe. Love y'all. Bye now.
So that's it for today's episode of Release Doubt, Reveal Purpose. Head on over to iTunes or wherever you listen and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week who posts a review on iTunes will win a chance in the grand prize drawing to win a $25,000 private VIP day with Sylvia Worsham herself. Be sure to head on over to releasedoubtrevealpurposepodcast.com and pick up a free copy of Sylvia's gift, and join us on the next episode.